everything there is to know about that particular culture. So tell me some things you're looking forward to when you go to Belize.
That is warm.
Yes. Take me with you and let's go today. What else?
Since we're mostly focused on like wildlife medicine and conservation, being able to see how different they treat those topics there than we do here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Trying new things like scuba diving and treating animals.
It sounds like that. Nice. Nice. What appealed to you about going to Belize? Did you just wake up one morning and say, I'm going to Belize? I would do that, by the way. I would so do that. What was your thought process? Were you afraid? Like, oh my gosh, I think I want to do this. When you sign the piece of paper, you set the pen down as if it were going to bite you, and step back and go, oh, I just did that. No questions, concerns, anxiety, excitement. Baby.
I mean, it was like kind of a bunch of stuff mixed together for me. Like I was really excited, but also like kind of nervous because it's really expensive. But then also it's such a unique, once in a lifetime kind of experience, and all different kinds of things like bucket list items wrapped into a trip. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's important to think about the things that brought you to the decision to even go to Belize and the process. And that's something that you all probably have in common, even though none of you are talking right now. But I would suspect that you all have some similar situations or some similar emotions about your upcoming trip and all the things that you're going to do and learn. And I think it's important, as we're talking about intercultural competence, to keep that as an underlying message to ourselves, that there's a reason that you wanted to do this. And it can be difficult, but your reasons for wanting to do this will never change, right? So when we're talking about cultures, because people can be really, I would say diversity and culture are easy, except for that pesky human factor. You know, you don't have to deal with people, it can be very easy. But we're talking about people. We're talking about different ideas, different ways of doing things. Intercultural competence really is about having the skill to work within that. Not just to look at it and appreciate it, but to really say, I want to understand a little bit more. I want to understand a little bit more about the reason that I got so excited about going. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Why? Right? It's about learning a little bit more each time you think about this trip. So that's how I like to think about intercultural competence. When we're talking about it, we're talking about understanding and respecting people whose values, ideas that are different from our own. And you don't have to go to Belize for that. Look around this room. You all have different ideas, different values, different skills and abilities that are important because they make up who you are. We also talked about responding appropriately in a different context, in multiple contexts. And again, you'll be tested even before you get there among your peers. Establish positive and constructive relationships with others. I know that you mentioned that before about, and you mentioned it as well. You'll have to work with other people, no matter where you go. And so this is a piece of that. And also, better understanding of yourself. And that's where this work really begins. So when we talk about doing the values continuum, that's really focused on you. Questions so far? I am so used to presenting with a slide that I keep wanting to do that. So forgive me if you see me looking at this screen, waiting for something to happen, you'll know why. Okay, so for those of you who are following along.
Yeah, are you guys able to follow along pretty well? Okay, great.
Oh, good.
Good,
Okay.
good, yes.
So we know that intercultural competence requires awareness first and foremost. And that awareness is about ourselves. What's important to us? I like to think about the things that kind of set us off in different situations, or the things that we're comfortable with, and understanding why those things are sort of red flags for us, if you will, or why we're comfortable with something that is not. So understanding self. It's also about knowledge, and I think that's a lot of what you're gaining in this series of classes, right? You're gaining knowledge about beliefs, all the things that you have to do when you get there, but that knowledge is important to you, and you'll continue to build on that while you're there. The last piece is skill, and that really is a lot of what the IDI is focused on. How do you work to develop the skills that, whoa, okay. So you can see all of my scratchings here. How do we work to develop those skills that will allow us to move further and further along this whole continuum, if you will, of the IDI? So, a question for you. No, actually, I'm going to skip through this part because the pictures are so cool and you can't see them, so it doesn't really matter, right? Well, you can see this one. So, you'll notice that on the picture on your screen, there is the same picture with 3 different words under it. Why is that?
People will perceive it differently.
Absolutely. They perceive it differently. So I'm that person who is probably somewhere in the middle because I'm scared of things. So while other people would see it as fun or spiritual, I'm worried about the things that actually live out there because this is their home and not mine, and I don't want to upset them, right? Other folks will look at that and go, oh, a hike in the woods is where I connect spiritually, right? Then there are folks who just say, oh, this is just fun. That's going to happen when you're in balloons, a lot. Again, we perceive things differently. Let's switch gears a little bit, talk about the intercultural or the values continuum.
I sent that to them. You guys, I sent that in another email, and you'll see the sheet. I actually sent it to you too, Sandra.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
Okay. So there's a sheet there that, let's see if I can actually get to it. It will say
The values continuum.
Trying to see if I can get to it on my screen.
Did you guys get that? Okay, great.
Okay, so what I'd like you to do, take a few minutes and this is kind of, I want you to fill out the sheet, but fill it out kind of in your mind. Or even if you have pencil and paper, write down sort of a number between 1 and 10. Let's scale it at 10 for each one of those pieces. And where are you with regard to each one of those values? So we'll start with 1 being on the left side and 10 on the right. And you'll see there it has a lot of words, individual versus group, or individual versus collective, direct versus indirect. These are all things that I want you to think about where you personally are. Are you a direct communicator? Do you cut right to the chase? Or are you kind of an indirect person? Well, maybe I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So I want you to go with what actually is you. Which one is you? Or is really you? Which one is you? That sounds really awkward.
And I'll grab those pieces of paper when you guys are done. If that's okay with you, I like to have the pieces of paper when you're all done. So you can put like individualism dash collectivism and then put a number 1 to 10 where you guys are on that spectrum.
So we have a piece of like paper.
So I'm wondering if this works now. Let me try it one more time.
Yeah. It just popped up there.
Yeah,
didn't
it sure did. I'm not sure what's going on here. Okay, so
I bet that's going to work.
yeah, I hope so. So I'm not sure where my adapter went.
Oh, there it is. Is that your
Yeah,
number?
that's not mine.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, that's the,
That's an apple
yeah,
board.
and I think that's with me, but for some reason, I'll try to, oh, there it is. Try it again. Here we go. Oh, yes. Okay, so I'll pull up your. It just took a little while.
Yeah.
And then I'll toggle back over to your slide.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about the delay.
No,
Yes.
this is great. And I think these are your papers. I don't want to take those.
Oh, thank you.
So has everyone had a chance to almost finish those? Takes a little bit longer when you have to write them out.
I would go print it, but then I need to tear it down.
I know. I should have brought some copies
Oh,
anyway.
I said I was
I
going
have a stack of them in my office.
to. Who said that they really loved sparkling water too? I brought you some today. Sandra, do you want anything? Can I get you?
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay.
Let's take one more minute and wrap up. All right. Now, what I would like you to do next is with someone next to you, and I see some of you have already been doing this, to compare some of these. I know we're not going to have time to go through all of them, but compare some of those. Some of the big ones like risk-taking versus security. That's a big one. Direct versus indirect. When we're talking about communication. Cooperative versus competitive. Look at some of those. Talk to the person next to you, or I think we might have a group of three as well, 2 or 3, and let me know what you think, what you come up with as a pair.
Do you want me to full screen it?
Yes. That would
Okay,
be great.
yeah, I'll do that for you. You're not a Mac person sometimes.
I am
it's-
not.
Oh.
Oh, I haven't used a Mac in years. Yeah, I was going, okay, there's no button here.
Right. There we go.
Okay.
And then I actually have this as well, so you can toggle through it.
perfect.
Yeah, let me just make sure that it. Okay. And you can push that button. Yeah.
Okay.
Or push it back.
All right.
There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
This is very handy.
Oh yeah.
I like that. It's less bulky than this.
Oh, I know, and I don't know whose that is that must have left it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And I think they left it on.
Oh
They
no.
did.
Yeah.
I'll at least turn it off for 'em.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's kind of nice because with this, you can actually see it actually highlights it. Yeah, if you want to highlight something, that's the top one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess like I feel
Take some.
yeah.
I like wouldn't want to change anything. So like I'd like to get really
I feel like I love the and I always think ahead, but at the same time, like I hate because like I found out like today, like last night or something, yes.
All right, let's take one more minute and then we'll come back together.
Yeah.
try that out.
Yeah, I feel like I can change it so I just like why is I'm talking something.
Yeah.
But if I'm not interested in the same thing, like so not concentration, it's so bad. So I'm like, I don't feel like I have
All right, let's come back together.
Yeah.
See, I knew you would talk. Once you talk to each other, you're just not talking to me. Ugh. Okay, so how was that? How many of you found that you were very different from your peers in your group? Where were you different?
I'm very indirect and Nicole was very direct.
Okay. Anybody else direct and indirect? That's always the one that jumps out at people. Yeah.
Who was direct? I want to get an idea. Who is indirect? Oh, interesting.
Okay.
Really interesting.
Okay. So the example that we use a lot with direct and indirect is you and your friends are going out for the evening, right? Friend is dressed, you go pick them up, and they have on a plaid shirt and a pair of striped pants and a polka dot jacket. What do? What does the direct communicator do?
Change.
What does that direct communicator say? What were you thinking, right? Oh, that's horrible. Go change. Indirect people, what do you say? I love how you wear anything. Why did you actually say choice? Is that new? Are all of those new? Right? What's another one? I've heard people kind of couch things, especially indirect communicators, can couch things in this way that's kind of a compliment, but not really a compliment.
Minnesota passive aggressive.
I didn't want to say that. I'm learning that. I've only been here 5 months, but I'm learning that. What's one that I heard someone say was, you see that person and it's a friend, so you've seen them in other things, obviously. Oh, your blue sweater looks so good on you. That would look so nice with those pants instead of this plaid. There are different ways that we communicate things. Let's see, what's another one? Task versus relationship. Was that on your sheet? Because there are so many different versions. Who are our task people? Let's do it. Let's get her done. Yeah. No time for small talk. Get it done. What about the relationship people? Yeah, you start the meeting talking about everybody's home. What are you doing for the holidays? Oh, I'm not doing anything. What are you doing for the holidays? Oh, well. Folks my age is, how are your kids? Oh, they're fine. How are your kids? Oh, that's good. Where's so-and-so end up at college? Blah, blah, blah. Right? Those are folks who value the relationship with people. Now, that's not saying that someone who is task-oriented doesn't. It just means that their focus is somewhere else. Their focus is on getting that task done. Now, what does that mean for you all? Why would we even care about this kind of stuff? Yeah.
Because the way that like you communicate something can be perceived differently by someone who's not used to that. It might have been them, or just in like everyday social situations, it can be a big determinant.
Absolutely. Perfect. Perfect. So, an indirect person. How do you perceive a direct person? What are some terms that come to mind when you have that? Think about the most direct person you can think of. What terms come to mind?
Rude.
Rude. What else?
Disrespectful.
Disrespectful.
Overwhelming.
Overwhelming. Scary. Aggressive. So think about this, direct people. Let that sink in, right? What about you indirect or direct people? What do you think of indirect folks? What do you think of indirect people? Indirect communicators. Yeah.
Like, I'm indirect, but I know sometimes my direct friends have perceived me as like more like timid sometimes.
Absolutely. Timid, scared. Yeah.
Or just passive aggressive, like you still have those thoughts, you're just not as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's one way, yes.
Like kind of like a pushover because they won't voice opinions. I'm
Right.
also one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Way too nice, scared, don't want to take a risk. Think about this as well. And in fact, as you're traveling, you might want to keep this in mind. There is a sheet. You might want to take that sheet with you. Because as you are working with a group, you want to know who that indirect communicator is. Because you want to approach them differently than someone that you know is just going to spit something right out. Or that person who is emotionally expressive versus the person who is emotionally restrained. And I don't know if that was that on your sheet as well? Okay. What does that mean? Emotional expressive versus emotionally restrained.
It's kind of how you display your emotions, or like if it's okay to share your emotions, or if you'd rather like keep it to yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So think about a person who is more restrained. If you're an emotionally charged, you just got to show everything, you have to express it, and you start to cry. What does that restrained person think? Possibly. Likely.
Sometimes it
Why are you crying? What are you crying about? Don't do that, right? The person who jumps up and down and just blows they blow their top. They're just having an all-out tantrum. They're doing all but laying on the floor, kicking and screaming.
I feel like it can be a thing where you can take like a situation differently than like if a person on the outside were looking at it, they'd be like, oh, that person, since they're displaying so much emotion, it must be a big deal, when it could have been just something little that upset them. But if you're looking on the other side, like if someone's really not displaying a lot of emotion towards it, they think like, oh, it's not a big deal, and they'll take advantage of that. So
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's perfect. You should come up and do this. But think about this. You're going into another culture. We talk about cultures in general here. These are all very personal traits, right? These are traits about identity, communication. Each one of those is about some different piece or some different trait that makes you who you are, how you look at goals, how you express yourself. How formal are you? Folks in Minnesota, for the most part, at the U are very informal, right? Start emails with, "Hi, Sandra." I like that. Whereas I've been other places and people go, "No, it has to be doctor," right? Keep that in mind. Now, what are some things that you might expect as you go to Belize? Do you think people are going to be direct or indirect communicators? And
Probably more direct, because Minnesota is just all like it's all a step up from here.
that is one way of looking at it. Absolutely. Absolutely. But think about what you might experience then in a place where maybe folks are, I wanted to play with this so bad, in a place where people are more emotionally expressive. People talk with their hands, talk really, really fast, right? Quite honestly, that would scare me. I'm animated as a presenter, but personally that scares the daylights out of me. Think about how you'll handle situations like that. I put this up just as a reminder that when we're talking about culture, so I want to transition a little bit from personal identity and awareness to cultural identity and awareness, because there are some pieces that are generally true of various cultures, and you'll get to know what those are, the same way you get to know them about yourself. Remember, we talked about intercultural competence being about awareness of self, knowledge of others or other cultures, and skills. So as we look at this iceberg, and I'm sure you all have seen this in one form or another, correct? Okay. So remember that there are things with the iceberg. Oh, I love that. There are things at the top of the iceberg that, we can see those things. I call those the food, festival, and fun. That's the stuff you'll recognize immediately when you get there, right? You can see that. And with an iceberg, there's that whole part that's above the water. You can see that. The part that is more interesting is what's here deep beneath the surface. And in fact, that's most of what makes a person who they are. Keep in mind that when you're seeing culture, quote, culture, you're only seeing the top part of it. Culture is built up of way more than what you can see. So let's get into the IDI, because I feel like I'm just rambling at this point. The IDI, how was it taking that? Have you all taken it before? Okay. I know some folks have. Okay. Was it different taking it the second time for those of you who've taken it before? How so?
I felt like I better understood some of the questions and I have a stronger opinion on things. I was more educated because I've had more experiences.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially after like going abroad and now coming back, like also using those other experiences into my thought process.
Right. Your perspective changes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So then you know that or you should know, the folks who've taken this before, because you know why you took it, that the IDI, or the Intercultural Development Inventory, really is a way of looking at a continuum of how we experience things, how we experience cultures differently, and how we respond to those things. So on one end here is denial. I love that. That's a person who basically, I don't know, I don't care, right? Okay, they're different, that's fine, has nothing to do with me. Those differences are there, I'm not going to deal with it, I'm just going to stay here and do what I do, okay? We move down a little bit, polarization. That's a person who says, you know, it's us versus them. And that's how they see culture. It's my culture and their culture, or our culture and their culture, right? And there are a couple ways we can look at polarization. So it can go either way. There's a way that we could say, well, okay, it's us versus them, and I think our way is better. I think my way is better. Or sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where we go, wow, that other culture is just so cool. You know, we have a lot to learn from that culture. That's called reversal. One is denial, one is reversal. Another piece, kind of in the middle, and I love that it's in the middle because you can look at that as a transitional phase. Minimization means, oh, okay, we're all really the same, right? If you treat everybody the same, it's all good, right? We're all the same. We're all human beings. That's what matters, okay? Acceptance is, okay, yeah, these cultures are different. I recognize there are differences here, and I'm cool with that. I love traveling to other places and learning new things because there's so much to learn. And I'm okay if I only read it in a book because I still learn something. I don't have to interact, or if I go there, I can still soak it all in, but I don't have to soak in everything. Just, you know, but I appreciate that it's there and it's complex. This person on the end at adaptation is, okay, woo, woo. Okay, the person at adaptation is a person who says, you know, I understand that culture is complex, and I will have to change the way that I see things and try to look at the perspective of other people. And maybe I'll have to change the way that I do things so that I'm working around the particular culture that I'm in or working within a particular culture. But it's an awareness that you have to change as well. We talked about intercultural competence being awareness, knowledge, and skill. Adaptation is the skill. And so we're all working from somewhere along this continuum. We all work with this sort of monocultural, or begin with a monocultural mindset. You know, it's just this one thing, right? We're all focused on us. Versus an intercultural mindset. So there's no test, right? These are mindsets. There's not a test that you can take that we're going to say, okay, yeah, all right, you passed. I wish it were that simple, but it really isn't. So this is your group IDI profile. Start with the perceived orientation. So the instrument is designed to look at a few things. One, it looks at how you perceive yourself culturally or interculturally, but it also looks at where you actually are. So there are questions that do both, right? So at the top is your perceived orientation, and this is you all as a group. We did not break these out to individuals. But looking at you as a group, you all put yourselves right about here in acceptance, firmly in acceptance. So that means that you all really see yourselves as having this orientation that, yeah, we respect difference, we understand difference. Difference is a good thing. You appreciate different patterns of cultures, and you also see the differences in your own culture, right? So that's a good thing. Now, the bottom scale is where you actually are according to the IDI. So if you look at this, the red is you, by the way. So it puts you more in minimization, which makes a lot of sense if you think about where we are. And for you, you're students, right? This is what you do. You learn. This is also a place where, and I believe this is probably what's bringing you to want to do more. You want to go to Belize. You want to learn about different cultures. So it makes a lot of sense. The good thing about minimization is that you're open to change. It is that transition stage. So to move you, the goal is to move you from minimization to acceptance. Okay? Are any of you surprised that there's this gap between what you thought and what you actually are as a group? A little surprised? We always say a number 7 or greater is a significant difference. And so people tend to overestimate or underestimate. You all have kind of overestimated where you are, but that's okay. Because it also means that you've got all this room to grow to reach that. Okay? The IDI also looks at, because we look at all of those different points, remember we're talking about denial and polarization all along the continuum, and it breaks down things into this range of developmental orientation. So what I found interesting about your group is that most of you, more than 50% of you, are here in minimization. So that's kind of the norm, and it's kind of got this interesting curve, right? Kind of a bell curve going. And there's a wide range in your group. You've got some folks who are in polarization. You've got some folks who are up in adaptation, right? That all depends on your experiences, your perspectives. Sometimes it can be as simple as where you are the day that you take this. Mm-hmm. Is it a bad day? I don't really care. I'm just going to mark stuff. Is it a good day? What cultural lens you're using, because we all have different cultural lenses. So keep that in mind. The folks who are in, polarization, and I think it's important to note that there are two ways of looking at polarization. We talked about that earlier. So you can talk about this as being defensive or reversal. Defensive is which is the blue, is I'm looking at this as us versus them, and I like us better, right? Reversal is just the reverse of that. It's us versus them, but I like them better. So keep in mind as you look at this that all of you may be in different places. So one thing that somebody might get and they go, wow, okay, that makes perfect sense. Someone else may say, I don't get it. That makes absolutely no sense. Why would they do that? And the other person who says it makes sense may not know why it makes sense, but they're able to adapt their thinking, their behaviors to that particular culture. Is this making sense? Okay.
I think that's why discussions while we're down in Belize, where
Absolutely.
we can talk about this, would be
Absolutely.
a great idea. Like maybe
Yes.
in the evenings, we can talk about our experiences and how we view it so differently.
Right. And how you'll view it differently now versus when you get back. You mentioned travel abroad. So it's possible to have a study abroad experience or some sort of travel experience and not move along that continuum. But a lot of people do. In fact, I'm going to venture a guess that most people do. The person who doesn't really change may be in a situation where, we're going to another country, but everybody is from the U.S. and we don't really interact with anybody else. How are you going to learn and grow? I don't think that's going to be your experience. You're going to have an opportunity to actually interact. So I'm going to wrap this up very quickly because I feel like I'm just going on and on. So applying what you've learned, because we've talked about a lot of stuff. First of all, we want to ask some questions. And I want you to do this throughout. I'm so glad you have this PowerPoint. What perspectives are you bringing? What perspectives are being presented when you hear something, when you see something? Ask those questions. What are the cultural frameworks underlying the perspective? And I know you'll talk a lot more about what that means in this class and when you get there. Are there perspectives that are missing? To me, that's an interesting one. Because I'm looking around this room, I don't see anybody who looks like me. My perspective may be very different because I experience the world in the skin that I'm in, right? So keep that in mind. What perspective is missing? And why does that perspective matter? That's another question, too. Are you getting a full picture without that perspective? What perspective are you bringing to the table? You all are a lot younger than I am. Okay, not that much. Well, you're younger than I am. You bring a very different perspective of every experience than mine. So think about what you bring. Is there a power differential at play? You know, sometimes you have great power as an American, right? It's not that you are running the country, but you come from a country that has a lot of privilege, and people look at you very differently. It puts you in a power position. Be aware of that. Be aware of how you interact with folks, given that dynamic. Okay? Can also talk about exploring the situation or topic further. That's that knowledge piece. How do you increase your knowledge? How do you learn more? Why is the situation or issue being viewed from a particular perspective when you're learning something? Why would we want to learn it from that perspective? Can you imagine the issue from more than one perspective? That's when we're talking about adaptation. Being able to see something through a different lens is part of being able to adapt. Why are certain perspectives not being presented? Also consider the application. How do you want to move forward? So as a group, you know where you are. You're around minimization. I keep wanting to say minimalization. Minimization. The next step is acceptance. How do you move forward? And that can happen for you as a group. So why do we want to engage in this whole journey? Well, you know, we have a multicultural country. You're going out into a, quote, multicultural world, right? You're actually leaving to go into another culture. It's important that we understand that. We want to be able to accommodate other cultures in such ways that we're able to recognize those patterns of cultural differences in our own culture as well as in other cultures. So again, you don't have to leave the U.S. to experience different cultures, right? How many of you live in the residence halls? Okay, so there's a culture in the residence halls, right? That's different from the culture of somebody who's living on their own. Okay? Think about little things like that. We're in multiple cultures every day. And we also want to be able to shift our perspective. So we've talked about that. You all are there questions? Because again, I get going and I'm like, yes, Energizer Bunny. If you all have more questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. This is my information. My office is 190 Coffee Hall, so a couple buildings down. Keep me busy. Come in and ask me questions. Otherwise, I start running through the building. It causes all sorts of problems. But questions. Thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful time in Belize. I'm jealous. I'd love to go. How big are your suitcases? Just saying. But thank you all. Appreciate
Sandra,
it.
thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming.
Oh, my pleasure.
So I have a couple of examples, actually, as Sandra was talking. These have actually happened in Belize. So one of them is when we were interacting with a group down in Placencia. You know, we come from a country
where punctuality is really important, right? Always being on time. And I worked with this one particular group that we will be working with, SEA, down in Placencia. And they may be 10 minutes late. They may be an hour late, right? And I think if you look at your values continuum, it's more about relationships for them. So if they come and say, oh, I'm sorry I'm an hour late, but I saw my brother and I haven't seen him in a really long time, right? It was more about relationships and connecting with that person than the task, right? So that may be a cultural difference that we may encounter, right? We will have differences within our own group. So this is another cultural difference that I had last year. I had a Native American woman come with us last year, and another student. I would say the Native American woman was more individual, right? Individualism. The other student was more of collectivism, right? She was more worried about, oh, is that the wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
Generally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's usually the opposite.
Right.
Okay, for this, I would say she was more worried about the group dynamics and where everyone was going at the time. So in one sense, the Native American woman was already married at 20 years old. She was taking on the responsibility from her grandmother to learn a language where no one else in her community knew this language, and it was upon her to learn this language and pass it down to her kids once she had kids, right? The responsibility that she had was, tremendous. She went to Belize, she learned how to dive, she was very expressive, right? Very emotional. The other student was much more reserved, an indirect person, and she was kind of like me, to be honest. I'm a mother hen type, right? So I worry about the group. I'm always kind of feeling hurting them in certain places, right? Well, these two personalities clashed one night, right? So one student, she says to the group, we should really be doing this, you guys. We should really be going this way. We should, and it was a constant struggle for her to herd everyone. Whereas my Native American student just said, I don't need to be told what to do. And she just, and one night, they both just went like this, they clashed. Neither one of them's right or wrong, right? They just both come from very different perspectives. And so how would we deal with something like that? How would we, and you can imagine the whole group around them when they all started this conflict, how everyone was just kind of standing there, what do I do? Right? Okay, so I'm just going to ask the group, what would you do in that case? How would you handle a situation like that? I saw that. Right? For me, I'm kind of more of an indirect person too. But I had to be direct in the moment, right? I had to make sure that the environment was safe for everyone. Okay, we need to always remember to respect each other, you guys. Let's go our separate ways. Maybe you go this way, cool off, you go this way. Or would you have them come together and talk about it? Maybe bring them, or, right, the emotional part. It was difficult. So I'm just saying, who knows if we have those type of interactions, but remember we all come from different perspectives, right? We see the world a little differently, and that maybe our views don't always mesh at certain times, but we should always be able to communicate and respect each other, right? Tolerance is a really big factor here, okay? And like I said with Belizeans too, another story we're running out of time already. Before you guys go, I do want to talk about vaccinations just really quick, just in case we just need to talk. One quick story, I had another student who, in the United States, we're all about service, right? We go to a restaurant, and the student says, oh, my hamburger has pickles on it. I literally told the person I did not want to have pickles on my hamburger, right? So she calls over the waiter, and she says, I told you I really don't want pickles on my hamburger, right? Of course, the guy is kind of looking at her like, So he says, okay, and he brings it to the back area. He takes off the pickles, and he brings it back, right? And she says, no, I can taste the pickle juice. You're gonna have to make me a whole new one. Yeah. So, right? I know. I mean, it makes everyone uncomfortable. We all kind of felt like, do we let that play out? And this is between her and this other person, and he doesn't see that he is more relationship oriented, not as service task oriented. Yes.
Is it normal to tip in the culture?
Yeah, it's actually not normal to
Okay.
tip. Yeah, right.
I know. I think it was Spain. They find it rude if you actually
Yes,
tip.
right,
so I
right.
wasn't sure
No,
how that
tipping
came across.
is not really done. Right.
Okay.
Right. So you don't really need, even though our urge is to tip, they don't really do that
Okay.
down there. Yeah. Now I do have to say, scuba diving is a little bit different.
You tip.
Yeah. Okay. So scuba divers, just so you guys know, it is customary to tip the captain.
Master captain.
Yeah, the captain. Yep. So it's those type of things. So I'm just going to say that you guys are going to see diversity. One other thing really quick is things break down in Belize, right? They don't have the resources we have. I've never been on a trip where there's not a flat tire and the bus doesn't break down, okay? Again, service, however, I want you to realize that they are very resourceful. They are knowledgeable about the bus and the tires because they have to deal with it all the time. You and I might get out of the car and go, I don't know, AAA, right? They go, okay, get the jack, let's go, we gotta do this. Takes a half hour, puts it back on. They do it, lickety split, and we're, okay. The boats break down. They pull open the engine, guy jumps down, fixes it, puts down the boat, and we're off, right? Happens all the time. Now, I think that it's incredible that they're so resourceful and knowledgeable about it, because they just can't take it to a mechanic. They don't have the resources we do. So you have to realize that they have talent and skills that we don't necessarily have to address. Okay, so really quick, I just want to say, Palmer was right about the typhoid. Okay, so I do want to recommend everybody's vaccinations are updated. Okay, I'm going to say do take a look at the CDC website. I did get hepatitis because that is one of them. I personally am not going to take any kind of malaria medication. Justin doesn't recommend that as well. I had a conversation with him. Typhoid, though, is new, and I probably will go ahead and do the typhoid. So I'm just recommending that may be something that you should be aware of. There's no vaccination, of course, for Zika, but I do want you to make sure that you have the DEET when you go down there. So if you have any questions, I just wanted to make sure that you should, before now and next week, our Belize providers are going to be here. So we can talk to Justin specifically about the vaccinations, but take a look at the CDC website, take a look at typhoid, and then we'll talk to him next week, okay? All right, sorry I kept you 5 minutes, guys, but thank you so much. Yeah, I'll take those sheets. I'm curious to see. And Sandra, thank you so much for coming again. I really appreciate that, yes. All right, you guys, again, next week is a really big one. Justin and Isabel will be here. Oh, before you guys go, I forgot to tell you this. People in physiology know this already, but the hour before our seminar, or our class, from 2 to 3, Isabel will be giving a seminar on wildlife veterinary medicine. So if you can make it, there'll be lots of other people here from physiology class also. Yes, here from 2 to 3, and then our class is from 3 to 4, and then Justin will be talking about the history of Belize just to our class. Okay? Yes. Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah. All right. I'll send you guys home.
I would have had
What is that? What is it?
Yeah, I was waiting to see, oh my gosh, how she was doing this.
That'd be great.
I would never think to put it back on. I would just take it off and just watch it.
Really?
Yeah.
It was a split-second decision. I don't know.
Because I want everybody to meet them.
Yeah.
But I
Oh, okay.
So I hope you're enjoying.
I was planning on running. I'm hoping I have a break. So I can be like,
You're there's plenty of good places to go. I'm sure you can.
Or even
Nice.
We're friends on Facebook. I can
oh, actually, I can add you.
Yeah. Then I can FaceTime you, and then or you can call me, and then
Okay.
we'll FaceTime. And then you can bring a computer too. If that
Yeah, I can set it up too if we have
Yeah,
to.
yeah. I know I'll probably do Palmer too, so she'll FaceTime them too. So yeah, we might do a WebEx, and in that case,
This one too?
yes. Awesome.
Alright, just as your friend or something. Okay, one more question. So, I know it's kind of long to think about flights and stuff, but for coming back on June 10th,
Yep.
do you know what time we land?
Yes, it's like 10:30.
Oh, it is, okay.
Let's talk about business.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine. So I was just gonna stay everywhere and then fly back to Chicago. So I'll just get a later flight then, I think. is what I'll do.
Okay,
Yeah.
make sure that's okay.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Should we actually
Everything like
contact you if she has a flight? Shanna?
Oh, to then go,
Yeah,
like what's
because
in the
we've done that before.
Really?
We had a
Like, I
student that
can
lived
book
in
one too.
Florida, and she got dropped out, she took a flight over to Miami to Florida. So we might be able to
Oh,
get you
instead
up
of Miami to Minneapolis? Oh, okay.
something to think about.
Yeah, I don't know that. And what's her name?
Shanna,
Okay.
and she probably is the one that sent you your,
I didn't care, I just thought it was
Yes.
funny, it
Oh,
was very much
yeah.
like,
I might be able to
over.
Yeah, he's like, oh,
change that.
Yeah, that saves flowers. Yeah.
And your flight. It
Yeah.
saves your flight ticket.
Yeah.
I want to look in there too, because I work at Florida
Yeah.
now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But.
I'm not sure that.
Yeah, kind of. I'm so like.
Oh, that's not, okay.
It's really fun.
I can't stand it.
Come say hi.
You probably smell like a smell. Yeah, you probably smell like I'm laughing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, oh my gosh, you look so much like my puppy. My puppy looks exactly the size.
Really?
He's twice as big. He's 107 pounds. Yeah. Oh, I love that. So I love that. I will never not have a dog in my life.
a chunky mess.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Okay, oh yeah, well, we can try and contact her and
Oh,
see
yeah.
how that can work out.
Yeah.
See if that could work for us to fly to Milwaukee together then.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right from, I think we come into Houston, right?
Okay.
So you could go right from Houston to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
Milwaukee, yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, you guys. Oh my gosh, look at that face. That rock on the head. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's some driving and then I'm
Yeah.
beautiful.
Over 2 hours. I mean,
They breed him that way, he's a breeder.
so is he, oh, Canada Dogs is a
Yep.
breeder.
Yeah, he's a
Oh.
breeder, yep, for Candu. So
He's a
actually,
breeder?
yeah, so he's gonna go breed this weekend.
Oh,
He just had 9 puppies.
oh my gosh.
Nine?
With
I
widgets, yeah, the different breeders.
Oh.
I know, I was like, you're working bad, but
Oh my gosh.
mom must be a handful.
Yeah. How old?
He's almost 2. He's
2.
23 months.
Okay. Oh, I think I would want a dog from him too.
Right.
Good to know. Where is Can Do Dogs out of?
It's in the Twin Cities,
Oh,
but I'm not sure.
Okay.
And they're all there, like, basically nonprofits, so they donate their dogs to people who need them.
Oh.
So that's how they have volunteers like us.
Oh,
at the
that's
college.
so awesome.
So we volunteer for free, and then
Oh my gosh, what a lucky job you have. I want to bring my dog to class, but he's just so obnoxious.
Yep.
I mean, and he's 4, but he's just all puppy.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Oh, labs. He would be trying to sit on people's laps, and he's 107.
Oh yeah, he does that too.
Yeah, he's a big lab.
Yeah, he's crazy. So,
My brother's lab does that.
yeah,
She's
I love him, but he's like hard to control. I mean, he's a sweetheart. Most of the time, he would just lay down and be like really lazy, but you never know. And I can imagine lecturing like, oh my gosh, sit down, get off of him.
Yeah, I have hair on me from
Oh,
5 minutes
yeah.
with the friend's lab last night.
Yeah,
So
oh yeah. There's all over the leggings.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
gone past it. so.
Yeah. What's his Mine's Hank, the tank.
Yes. And we call him Fresh the
love
Tank
that.
because he just runs into everything.
Oh,
Yeah, you don't care.
he's got that beautiful reddish color.
I know. Yeah, we were.
Really
Is he
beautiful.
golden? Like what?
Oh, look at that.
Nice.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, you go run.
Oh my gosh, me too.
Not for a while though.
Yeah, I don't have one for a while either.
Thanks for coming, you guys.
Thanks, have a good
See you
weekend.
later.
Oh yeah, I'm stealing these. If that's alright.
Oh, of course. In fact, if you want the other ones, seriously. Yes, take them. I shouldn't be eating them, so I want them gone. Yeah.
I'm couch surfing, so
Oh.
everything will appreciate this.
Thank you so much. That was
Thank you.
very cool.
This
Yeah.
was my first group date.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my
So-
gosh. It didn't seem that way at all. Oh my
I've
gosh.
been studying, making sure I got this right. So
Oh, that was beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm
That was
learning.
perfect. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah,
I'm still learning.
Oh my gosh, no, that was great.
I know you've been through this before, so let me know if there are things
Yeah.
that I can improve, change, include,
You
take
did a
out.
great
I'm
job.
happy to do that.
And I've sat in on Carl's
Mhm.
before, and you
Mhm.
did a wonderful job. Yeah, you did a great job. And if you need anything from me, I mean, I can, I have people coming in, looking at my teaching. I can write letters for you or whatever you
Oh.
need for your,
Okay.
I mean, those are things that I think about.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, I hadn't even thought about that.
yeah. So if you
Wow.
need anything from me, that's awesome.
Okay, I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
and I really liked it because my next slide, I didn't have a lot of time to formally roll it out, was
Mhm.
group dynamics.
Oh, good.
So it was a perfect transition,
Good.
and that's what I'm gonna start with. Well, our police providers are gonna be here next week,
Right.
but the week after, that's what I'll start with. So,
Okay.
yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you.
perfect.
Well, enjoy Belize if I don't see you before then.
Yes.
It sounds exciting.
Oh, can't wait. It's
Oh.
really, it's so fun I have students that have never seen the ocean before.
Yeah.
And so, just to watch everything through their eyes, learning how to dive,
Oh,
working with wildlife animals,
Yeah.
it's so great.
yeah.
It's so
I
fun
love
for
it.
me. I
Yes,
know.
exactly.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. So,
Oh,
well,
it reminds us of why we do the jobs
I
that
know, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just really fun.
Yeah.
So, and this is my 4th year doing it, and so
we do. Oh,
I've
wow.
seen it all.
I
I've seen
bet.
the tears and the, sickness and
Yeah,
but I think you learn a little bit each time you go,
right.
and it makes it easier and easier for the students. So I love the IDI because, like I said, it gives me a platform to talk about some of the things
Right.
that, group dynamics is a big part of this.
Absolutely.
So for us, and this is not something that I wanted to get into, but they split off the first 2 weeks. So the divers go down
Okay.
south, the snorkelers go to the wildlife rescue. They switch.
Oh.
They don't even see each other for the first 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And then they come back together week 3. And so integrating them, they're already formed their cliques.
Yep.
It's always been a struggle. So
Yeah.
I've built in some team building exercises. I mix up the
Right.
groups. I try to get them to, integrate in a different way.
Yes.
So last year we tried this. We tried to have them all together at first and then split them off at the back end of the trip
Mhm.
because it just seemed so hard to integrate them.
Yeah.
And I can tell you it was harder trying to
To
split.
separate them. I could imagine.
Why can't I do it like that?
Yes,
Why-
exactly.
So that was
They're more
more.
malleable at the beginning.
That was more traumatic.
Yeah.
So we went back to the original model, and then I'll try the team building exercises. But this actually gives me a great way to talk about it, and it gives them a perspective that they have to think about. People have differences in the way they approach things.
Absolutely. And how am I going to be different? If I scare this person, why are they treating me this way? Well, maybe that person's less direct, and you are scaring them.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah.
And I've had conflicts before where I've had, like the one I was rolling out. And so I want people to be able to understand that someone else is not thinking the same way they are.
Right.
And that how do we bridge the gap and communicate?
Exactly.
Right. So thank you
Good
so much.
stuff.
Yes, I
Really good
love it.
stuff. Well, have a great weekend.
Yes, you
This
too.
is not police.
I know, and I feel so bad. My police providers, I told them, they came in February last year, and I said, come so much nicer. No, not this year.
Well, maybe, but are they here? When do they arrive?
Monday when it snows. Oh, I know. And
Oh,
Justin is from the Midwest. He's
Okay.
an expat, and so
Okay.
he's fine with it. But Isabel's from Germany. She's a German, and she's lived in
Okay.
Belize for 20-something years, and
Okay.
she hates the cold. She really is not. She doesn't do well in the cold.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
she'll struggle next year or next week for sure.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll see how it
well,
goes.
so people are telling me this is an unusual winter. I'm going to take their word for it.
Yes.
So,
You know, it's very variable. Some years on St. Patty's Day, it's been 80 degrees and it's super nice and it was just a beautiful spring. And some springs it's this, and
Yeah.
we just don't know.
I think I came here February last year, just for a weekend. It was like 70 degrees.
Right. Right.
So literally, I joined in a march that was going down Lake Street. I'm out with my phone,
Oh wow.
taping the march. And I said, I'm going to go join. I have no idea what they were marching for, but it seemed cool. So.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. Yes.
But yeah, that's, I mean, you don't know what you're going to get.
Well, I honestly really thank you for coming and
Oh, I'm
rolling
happy to
this out.
do this. Yeah, this was good. They were a good group for me to kind of get my feet wet. So
Yeah.
I'm feeling a little bit more confident about it. And I've got several of these coming up. So
Okay.
now I know what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really does help them in the long run. It gives them a perspective when they get into situations where they have to communicate and understand where the other person is coming from.
Right.
All those skills are really important.
Well, I can see the looks on the faces when I explain the difference between their perceived orientation and their
Yes,
actual.
right,
And it was
right,
kind of the,
right.
wow,
Yeah.
really. And so I think that is also very helpful
Yeah.
when you think, I got this.
Right.
And you realize, no, maybe not.
You know, and it's interesting. I lived abroad when I was in high school. My father was in the
wow.
military and I lived in Germany.
Okay.
And when I first took the IDI, it looked almost exactly
Uh-huh.
like that. And I thought I was so progressive. Like, oh my gosh, I see everyone as the same. You know?
Right.
Oh, I'm so worldly and
Right.
progressive. Right? So it is a good reality check.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I found myself in a similar place the first time I took it.
Yeah.
So
Right, right,
we can all grow.
right. Join, what is it? Join the party.
Yes, yes. That's what I forgot to put in
Oh,
there.
that's okay. I think
You've seen this a few times.
Yeah. So I think I rolled that out yesterday or last week. So I mean,
Okay.
when I was kind of saying, oh, adaptation is. I only had 2 minutes to say, okay, you're going to do the IDI. And so yeah, I'm glad that you elaborated, and it's nice for them to see it from someone else. Too.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let me know next time. I'm around.
No, I would love you to come every year. Seriously, every year, just plan on coming into the Belize,
I can do that.
and we're going to be doing Thailand too. We're going to be switching
wow.
now back and forth from Thailand to Belize.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah,
Okay.
but it'll still be me, and so I'd love you to come in.
Okay, yeah, just let me know when you want me to send those out,
Definitely.
and we'll get them ordered, and
Awesome.
then we'll debrief.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good weekend.
You too.
Sweet.